Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending salutations upon our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we really need to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed many favors upon us. And if you look at the amount of bounties and favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us, really, one is that we ask for the bounties from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the other is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just grants it to us. If you look at Surah Al-Fatiha, and this is the reason why I'm choosing the surah to start off the discussion, is because this is the surah that we recite tremendously throughout our prayers and throughout our lives. And specifically when the month of Ramadan comes, obviously the salawat, the prayers come, and the tarawih and the qiyam al-layl increases. So Surah Al-Fatiha is a surah that we continuously recite. So within the surah, we are doing two great things in the surah. One is we are praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the second is we are making a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a third thing, however, in the middle, and that is basically admitting to the fact that we are the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you just look at the verses of the surah Al-Fatiha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is teaching us. This surah is actually a means of teaching insan, a means of teaching us that this is how you are supposed to ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say Ramadan, we say, begging from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We talk about, basically making dua and supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Surah Al-Fatiha is the essence of dua. It is teaching us how to make dua. So right in the starting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us. And He teaches us that we have to be able to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the manner He ought to be praised. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He teaches us, He says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. The praises belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is Rabbul Alameen. And Rabbul Alameen, He is the Lord of the universe. Now understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says Alhamdulillah, all praises belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the Lord of the universe. Thereafter, He goes on with another praise of His. He says, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most merciful, the most beneficent. The third great, basically, praise of His, right in the starting of Surah Al-Fatiha, He says, Maliki Yawmiddin, that He is the King of the Day of Judgment. Now, if you look at these praises that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us, this is psychologically having an effect on us as well. That Rabbul Alameen, all praises belong to Him. Rabb is a being who takes care of a certain thing or a certain person, a being, etc. So over here in this case, Rabb is over here. The quality of Rabb is basically for the whole universe. Basically, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Rabb of the whole universe. Now, when you look at the word Rabb itself, Rabb. You have the term in the Arabic language. You have the Arabs would say man rabbul bayt, man rabbu hadha al-ibil, who is the caretaker of this house, or who is the caretaker of these camels, etc. So this term is actually used in that context. Nevertheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clarifying this one aspect right in the starting of Surah Al-Fatiha. He says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, that He is the Lord and He is the one who is taking care of the universe. And this is one great thing when we are making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have this in our minds, that we are speaking to Rabbul Alameen. We are speaking to, He is so merciful. That's why the second verse, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, is to show that He is merciful. So this is basically to have an impact on us when we are making dua, that He is there to ask, He is there to respond to our calls, that He has created us. He's our creator. So obviously He has a love and affection towards us. Then we go on to the next verse, Maliki Yawmiddin, He is the King of the Day of Judgment. Now, after establishing this part in the surah, thereafter We say iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, that, oh Allah, we are solely your servants, and do we alone you alone do we worship. Now after this we are making a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is the dua that I would like to speak about right now. This dua here, that basically it breaks down our life. You know, as a human, you know, we would be good or we would be bad, right? And in this dua, this is the dua that constantly. So one thing that we mentioned, that we recite this surah again and again. It is a surah that is actually considered a surah that is repeated multiple times. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَاكَ سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِ وَالْقُرْآنِ الْعَظِيمِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِ, 7 verses that continuously be repeated. And as we mentioned, that in the month of Ramadan and even through our lives, we continuously recite Surah Al-Fatiha. So this is a surah that continuously is repeated. And in fact, you know, if you look at throughout the Quran, where is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually you know, praises a surah? You know, that can be a question for perhaps the audience. You know, where is it in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually praises another surah? Right? If you want to give it a try, perhaps which surah is praised, and where is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually praises? Okay, let me answer that for you, inshallah. So probably a tough question. Anyway, so in the same verse, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَكَ سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِ. So Allah Ta'ala has given 7 verses that are repeated, وَالْقُرْآنِ الْعَظِيمِ, and He has given you a great part of the Quran, and that is basically referred to Surah Al-Fatiha. So Surah Al-Fatiha is a great part of the Quran that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala Himself is praising. He's praising it Himself. So nevertheless, He's teaching us how to make a dua and how to supplicate and ask. And that is basically this is the introduction to the Quran, right? So Surah Al-Fatiha is the introduction to the Quran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us how to ask and how to beg and make dua and supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, in this surah, He says, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ. He's teaching us to say this. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. That we alone do you alone do we worship, and we ask you for help. So therefore, He says the dua now. He says, إِهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Oh Allah, guide us to the right path. As we were speaking, there's 2 types of path. One that goes towards Jannah, and the other goes basically towards Jahannam. Right? So therefore, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Guide us to the right path, the straight path. And that straight path, speaking about the straight path, Allah Ta'ala says, صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. This is the dua that we are calling on towards, basically calling on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. That path, we want to be on that path that أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had bestowed His mercies upon those individuals. So those people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed His mercy and showered His mercy upon, we want to be from amongst that those individuals. And who are they? In essence, if you look at it, it is the Sahaba radhiyallahu anhum majma'in, it is the companions of the Prophet, it is the Anbiya, the great prophets, it is the Shuhada, the martyrs, etc. So these pious individuals, we are making dua that we want to become basically like them, and we want to enjoy the bounties that they got, and the bounties that were bestowed upon them. أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. The bounties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon them, we want to be from amongst them. Then He says, then He's teaching us the second part of dua. صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. We don't want to be from amongst those individuals that went astray. Number one, that maghdubi alayhim, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger and wrath was upon, those individuals we don't want to be from amongst. And number two, wala dhalin, the ones that went astray. So both of them are basically the ones that are heading towards the left side, the ones that are heading towards heading towards towards Jahannam. So we want to be from amongst those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed His favors upon. And those individuals are the ones that obviously recognized Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with regards to that, to understand this aspect, we have to understand a great part of a portion of the Quran, or great verses of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, Allahu khaliqu kulli shay wa huwa ala kulli shayin wakil. So before we even get on to the aspect of, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically leaving one channel towards khair, towards those that go to Jannah, and the other channel towards Jahannam, right? So صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم and غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. So there's two pathways. There's two places or pathways that we can tread. So over here, before we actually get onto these two pathways, understand the concept. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created every single thing. Whatever we see, we don't see, even if you look at, for example, heat, right? We can't see it. We can't see cold, right? It is gauged through a thermometer or a different means, but we cannot see it with our eyes. Nevertheless, Allah, whatever that is out there, it is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, Allahu khaliqu kulli shay wa huwa ala kulli shay wakil. Allah the Almighty, He is the creator of every single thing, wa huwa ala kulli shay wakil, and He is a witness upon this. And thereafter, in another place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, Wallahu khalaqa kulla dabbatin min ma. فمنهم من يمشي على بطن ومنهم من يمشي على رجلين ومنهم من يمشي على أربع يخلق الله ما يشاء إن الله على كل شيء قدير. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions والله خلق كل دابة من ماء. Allah the Almighty has created His creation. He has created different creatures, and He has created them from al-ma. He has created them from water, from the element of water. And then He mentions فمنهم من يمشي على بطن. There are those that slither upon the land. They slither on land upon their wombs, and then He says, وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى رِجْلَيْنِ. There are those that walk with the two legs that Allah has provided for them. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى أَرْبَعٍ. There are those that walk with the 4 feet that Allah has given them. Allah says, يَخْلُقُ اللَّهُ مَا يَشَاءُ. Allah creates what He wills. إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Not only does Allah create what He wills, after creating it, He has full control and authority over that. In Allah ala kulli shayin qadir. That don't think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after creating it, He has no control over it. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has full, complete control over that. So that's why He says, in Allah ala kulli shayin qadir. Nevertheless, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything. That's one aspect. Then thereafter He says, Alhamdulillah alladhi khalaqa as-samawati wal ard. That Allah has created the heavens and the earth. He has created things in different pairs. He has mentioned as well, وَجَعَلَ الظُّلُمَاتِ وَالنُّورِ. He has created darkness and light. He has created darkness and light. So just like how we were speaking about right in the starting, there is the path to tread, that is the path towards Jannah, and then there's the second path, which is towards the left side, which is towards Jahannam. So these are the two different channels. So therefore over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning, وَجَعَلَ الظُّلُمَاتِ وَالنُّورِ. That there is the path of nur, and then there's the path of dhulumat, darkness. In another place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, just for us to understand prior to getting into the discussion that we're getting into. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Allahu alladhi khalaqa as-samawati wal ard wa ma baynahuma. Whatever is between the heavens and the earth, everything is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So everything that we can think, we know of, we don't know of, it is all creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, you look at, time. Allah, wal asr. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath in time. In fact, in the riwayat of Abu Dawud, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions, it's a hadith Qudsi, that with regards to time, that He says He says that I am time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says that what's wrong with Bani Adam, that they curse time. يَسُبُّ الدَّهْرُ. They curse time. وَأَنَا الدَّهْرُ. That I am time. Basically, He's trying to, basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to this aspect that He is the creator of time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after creating something, He's totally independent of every single thing. He does not need time. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He exists without time. Before time was even created, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was there. And after everything is going to come to an end, in the riwayat of Tirmidhi, it's mentioned that when the trumpet will be blown, then everything will come to an end. When everything will come to an end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then He will say that أَنَا الْمَلِكَ أَيْنَ الْمُلُوكُ الْأَرْضِ, that I am the king. Where are the kings of the world? So coming back to the same discussion, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after creating everything, it is all in the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Now coming to, basically breaking it down slowly, now coming to this aspect, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating the pathway towards Jannah, towards khair and Jannah, and then shar, and basically evil, and towards Jahannam. So after understanding these two extremes, why did the question may arise? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Okay, we understand khair, we understand towards Jannah, we understand goodness. But why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create shar? Because it is also a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why did Allah ta'ala create shar? Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all, it is not something that, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. That, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that whatever happens in the land or in the sea, it is because of what we have done, what insan has done. Because of that, we are basically, it's basically a rebound of basically what we have done. So whatever we have done, we will see that. It is a mere effect that will come back to us, whatever we have done. So nevertheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, in that verse, ظهر الفساد في البر. So he mentions ظهر الفساد. So the fasad has become apparent. It's not that the fasad and corruption and evil was created when we did something. Rather, it has become apparent when we do certain things. That when we do evil actions, when we do haram, when we do evil things, then the effects of that will definitely come about. So with regards to, first of all, keeping ourselves protected from that evil and shar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in this is actually a command in Surah Al-Falaq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first mukhatib of the Quran is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah ta'ala is directly telling Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and also telling me and you that we should be doing this. Basically, qul meaning recite and say, قل أعوذ برب الفلق. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق. So first part, قل أعوذ برب الفلق. Say, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say أعوذ برب الفلق, that I seek refuge برب الفلق, with the Lord of daybreak. And then he says من شر ما خلق. So one is we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala رب الفلق to give us refuge and protect us against what? من شر ما خلق, from all the evil that was created. Now, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions his qualities, whenever he brings his quality in the Quran, he mentions it for a reason. So we understand a broader picture. So nevertheless, over here in this verse over here, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning رَبُّ الْفَلَقِ, the Lord of the daybreak. He could have mentioned Rabbul Ard, the Lord of the world, etc. But he mentions this Rabbul Falaq, so that we understand the next passage, min sharri ma khalaq. And basically we are getting towards shar and evil that is basically created. Nevertheless, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, min sharri, so قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. Falaq, the word falaq itself, to understand that, you have to understand the Arabic term, basically, which is referred to as, basically the word falaq is actually referred to as as-subh. In the tafsir, Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, he mentions as-subh, morning, right? So that's one way of looking at it, as we mentioned, the daybreak. Nevertheless, there's a deeper explanation. Whenever there's an Arabic term, then there's a deeper explanation to that, to understand it. So therefore, over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he mentions قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ, رَبُّ الْفَلَقِ, Rabbul Falaq is actually, falaq is not only morning, but to understand the whole concept of al-falaq, Rabbul Falaq, you have to understand what is falaq. When a person takes a seed and he plants it down in the ground, what happens is this seed, when it comes, it tears open the ground and it comes out. And later on, it tears the ground and it comes out. And then thereafter, you get fruits, crops, vegetation, etc. So this seed is breaking through the ground. This is the act of falaq. Basically, this is the act of basically tearing or opening, or if you want to say tearing the ground open and coming out. In this case, nevertheless, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the same term in different places as well. It says faliqul habbi wan nawa, same thing. Basically, when the seed breaks open the ground, faliqul isbah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this term again. Nevertheless, so over here, what is happening? Ibn Kathir, he mentions, he says, to understand it more better, he says, كَالْعَيْنِ مِنَ الْجِبَالِ وَالنَّبَاتِ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ مِنَ الْأَرْحَامِ. He says, it's just like how the springs, they break open through the mountains and they come out. And like how you have crops and vegetation, they break through the ground and they come out. And a child, from the womb of the mother, she comes out, the child comes out. So similarly, Rabbul Falaq, when we are calling on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are saying Rabbul Falaq, basically it is referring to when the darkness is there, and then now the light is breaking through. And this is what is referred to, Rabbul Falaq. So we are calling on to the Lord of the daybreak. So therefore we say, when we call on to him, we ask him for protection against what? Min sharri ma khalaq, from all the shar and evil that was created. Now this is basically coming to the discussion that we are headed towards. So basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he mentions this, when he mentions about shar, connecting it back to our starting of the discussion, that we have a pathway that leads to Jannah and a pathway that leads to Jahannam. And the pathway that leads to Jahannam, automatically we understand that khair would lead to Jannah and shar would lead to Jahannam. So therefore, to understand this concept of shar, I mean, if you're to open a dictionary or even Google the term evil, if you're to even Google the term evil, you'll see basically evil is basically in the absence of good. When there is no good, then basically that is considered evil. So if for example, if there's rich people out there and they're not providing for the poor, and the poor are suffering, then this is a type of evil that exists. There's a hurricane, tsunamis that come. This is a hardship that comes upon people. So there's no more good in a society. So therefore there's evil and there's hardship, there's corruption, there's calamities that exist. So why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create this in the first place? One of the things is when we fast, then basically what are we doing? We are actually we are reminding ourselves about the poor people. Okay, so so coming back, so when we fast, we are actually reminding ourselves that there are poor people out there, and this is one of the reasons. There's many more reasons why we fast. Nevertheless, so basically, what are we saying? We are actually reminding ourselves that look at the thousands out there that don't have food to eat. That so once we feel that hunger, then we remember about the poor people out there. So nevertheless, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he created hunger, he created poverty. All this is a creation, as we mentioned. It is a category of if you want to classify it as under the banner of shar. So why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create this in the first place? Now, I mean, basically the time that we're living in, you have the virus, the different difficulties that people are going through right now at the moment. Perhaps people are not suffering, some of them are not suffering through the virus itself, but the effects of the virus, because of that, they don't have a job, and perhaps they're not able to pay off their rent, etc. So there's different types of hardships that people are going through. So why is this there in the first place? And that is the key question. If you want to if a person wants to break it down to this, you will basically come to this question itself, that why is it there in the first place? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Jannah, it makes sense, but why did he create Jahannam and the pathway to Jahannam and the hardships and difficulties that lie there? So to understand that, there is one verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions, and this is basically in the time of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There was a town, or in the outskirts of Medina, there was a group of people. They came to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they asked him that we want rain to come, and because our crops are not growing, etc. So we really need rain. So can you make dua that we get rain? And you are the Nabi of Allah, you are the Rasul of Allah. So once you make dua, inshallah, rain will come, and inshallah, we will enjoy the fruits of that. That's one incident that Ibn Kathir mentions. Another incident that he mentions is perhaps it was with regards to another individual. His wife was about to give birth, and he wanted that his wife gives birth to a boy rather than a girl. So he came to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, can you make dua that I get a boy, not a girl? Nevertheless, so if you want to break it, if you want to understand the same concept that we're speaking about right now, why did Allah Ta'ala create shar and hardships and difficulties and calamities in the first place? So for these individuals, they are suffering because their crops are not growing and they're not getting rain. And then you have this man here who wants a boy, not a girl, and that's the type of a hardship that he's going through. Everybody's going through different types of difficulties. In fact, in one hadith, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also mentions with regards to even a splinter that pokes a mu'min, that small little hardship that he goes through. Nevertheless, so the verse over here, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, He reveals this verse. He says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى حَرْفٍ. That there are those people that actually they believe in Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, they worship Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, but they are at the tip of worshiping, meaning they are just about to fall off. They might leave the fold of Islam at any time. They are worshiping Allah, yes. That group of people that came to Medina, that came to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and they are asking Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam for rain. Yes, they have come to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and they are Muslims. They are worshiping, but is it, is this a condition that if Allah Subhanahu wa Taala was to give them rain, then will they continue worshiping Allah Subhanahu wa Taala? Yes, they will. But what will happen if Allah Subhanahu wa Taala doesn't give them rain? That although Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, although Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam makes the dua, but they don't get the rain. Although Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam makes the dua, but that man who wants a boy, he gets a girl, right? Will he still continuously worship Allah Subhanahu wa Taala? So Allah Subhanahu wa Taala mentions, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى حَرْفٍ. There are those people that worship Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, but they are at the brinks of worshiping. They are just about to fall off the mountain of Iman. He says, فَإِنْ أَصَابَهُ خَيْرٌ اطْمَأَنَّ بِهِ. When goodness comes to them, they are content. Alhamdulillah, Allah accepted our dua. Alhamdulillah, I didn't get affected by the virus. Alhamdulillah, I'm living a normal life. I make dua, alhamdulillah. But when أَصَابَهُ فِتْنَةٌ انْقَلَبَ عَلَى وَجْهِهِ. But when the difficulty and the fitna and the test comes from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, what happens to them? They turn around. They turn away. And then with regards to these people, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala mentions خَسِرَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْخُسْرَانُ الْمُبِينُ. That these are the individuals that have lost in the dunya and the akhirah. This is the ultimate loss. So Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has created shar and hardships, difficulties, calamities, name it. All that is created for what reason? For it to be a test upon the mu'mineen. In fact, in one hadith, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the riwayat of Bukhari, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions, "Ma yusibu al-Muslim min nasabin wala wasab wala hammin wala hazan wala adha wala gham hatta ash-shawkata yushakuha illa kafara Allah bi khataya." Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he mentions that whatever type of difficulty, hardship, sorrow, grief, whatever a mu'min goes through, even to the extent, as I mentioned earlier, a splinter that just pokes a mu'min, what happens in return of that? إِلَّا كَفَّرَ اللَّهُ بِهَا خَطَايَاهُ. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is basically removing the sins that was on his slates. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is removing all that. So this mu'min is basically, he is enjoying life in that sense. Whatever hardship comes to him, he's going through hunger, he's going through any sort of calamity, hardship, he is enjoying, because although it might be tense at the moment, but he's looking at, he has a farsightedness. That a mu'min, he has a very far, he looks far ahead, and he looks at subhanallah, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, what He has to offer for him, that his sins are being wiped off in return of this. So Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, He mentioned that is one thing. Another basically a way to look at it is another verse of the Quran. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala mentions, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. We have read this, and we have heard this, and we have recited this dua again and again. And any type of calamity that comes, we should continuously recite this dua. This dua is like the key to the hardship. Whenever any person is going through any sort of hardship, this is the dua that he should be calling out to and making dua with these words, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. But before that verse, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun, before that verse, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, what is He saying? He says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only is He saying, I will test you, He's saying, I am definitely going to test you. That there is no doubt about this. Lam in the starting and the noon at the ending is showing emphasis. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّ وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّ. With emphasis, I'm saying this, that you will definitely get tested. بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ. Fear and hunger, and نَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ. Loss of wealth. وَالْأَنفُسِ. And even your health conditions, you will get tested with that. And then Allah Ta'ala says, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. That the person that adopts patience and sabr, there is glad tidings for that person. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ. When the musibah and difficulty strikes the person, that is when he says, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. You know, the word musibah itself, it's a very unique word. You know, if you were to ask, you know, any person from perhaps, you know, Pakistan or even the Arabs, when you say, what is musibah? He will say a very, you know, a difficulty, a calamity that has, you know, a great calamity, disaster that has come. Musibah, this is what musibah is. But the actual word musibah itself, where does it come from? Asaba yusibu basically refers to, if you look at the linguistic point of view, asaba yusibu means to hit a target. Or when a person is basically shooting an arrow, when he's shooting an arrow, the amal, the act of shooting an arrow, that is called basically the verb asaba. And if a person hits the target, that is basically called sawab. The correct, he got a bullseye right on target, right? So asaba, so alladhina idha asabathum musiba, when this arrow hits the target, when this arrow hits the target, when this difficulty and this calamity comes, and when it comes on target, meaning at the time that it was supposed to come, it's coming exactly, accurately, the moment it was supposed to come, it is hitting us. And this musibah comes right at us. It's not because, you know, when we want it to happen, oh, we will delay this musibah, or it's going to come anyway, so therefore it's going to come on. No, rather it's going to come on its appropriate time, just like how death is going to come. Musibah is going to come upon us. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ. When this musibah comes upon us, and in fact in another verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ إِلَّا فِي كِتَابٍ مِّن قَبْلِ أَن نَبْرَهَا. That this musibah is supposed to come. It was already written min qabli an nabra. It was already written that it was going to come to us. So this hardship, difficulty, calamity that was supposed to come, it is going to come no matter we like it or not. So now, coming back to the same same discussion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created evil, He has created shar, and these difficulties and hardships, poverty, hunger, all that is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All that is basically categorized under the banner of shar. So all that is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create it? Why did all this hardship, you know, people are not able to pay their rent? Why all these hardships coming at the, you know, at the moment? You know, as a Muslim, we would say, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, this month of Ramadan, you know, what a great musibah has come upon us. We could have been sitting in the masjid today. You know, what a great musibah has come. Why didn't it come after Ramadan? A person could have questioned. But it is from taqdeer, and it is from our belief that whatever happens, it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we mentioned right in the starting, it is in Allah ala kulli shayin qadir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has complete power. He knows exactly when it's happening, why it's happening, how it's happening. And why did he do this in the first place? It is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions right there in the starting of this verse, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ. He is testing us. This is a test. So a person might question and might ask, wait a minute, then if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this, you know, in this manner, this musibah, hardships to come in this manner, and you know, even if you look at Nova Scotia, the shooting that happened, you know, so if all this happens, if all this is happening, all the shar and evil is happening, why did Allah Ta'ala create it in the first place? What if this world had nothing, no hardship, no difficulties, no calamities, right? Then, you know, wouldn't that be the mercy aspect, or Ar-Rahman, that would have been Rahman's, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being, you know, shown to the world and the dwellers of the world. So why is there shar in the first place? And why do we have to go through this hardship? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this, if He didn't create it, you want to see a species, a creation that does not face hardship, that does not face any sort of shar and evil. Look at the angels are already there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already created the angels. They don't have to go through the hardship. They don't have to go through any, they just listen to the commands of Allah and sami'na wa ta'ala. They do what as Allah ta'ala tells them to do, they do that. So the angels are already there. Now, why do we have to go through this hardship, difficulties, calamities, etc.? Well, with the glory comes the pain, right? So the hardship, the pain that we are going through now, then we will enjoy Jannah thereafter. And if you're to look at it, Jannah is the place where there's only good. And Jahannam is the place where there's only evil and shar. And in this world, if you look at it in a graph, right, Jannah is only going up. You take a bite of food, you'll be looking forward to the next bite. You'll be like, this take a morsel, take a morsel, and then after that you'll be like, subhanallah, so nice. And you take another bite, and then you'll be like, it's even better. Third bite is more better than the first two bites, and this gets better and better. That's Jannah. And in Jahannam, it just gets worse and worse. But this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in such a manner that there's good up and down right through. That's why it's dunya. That's why this is a place of test. And coming to one very important verse of the Quran, understanding why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. So one reason was it's a test. It's a test. Who's going to pass the test? Who's going to go to Jannah? Who's going to fail the test? Who's going to go to Jahannam? That's one. And the second thing, second basically answer to it, or for us to understand this purpose of creation of this hardship, calamities, disasters, evil, and COVID-19, right? Whatever you want to name it, right? All this, basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why did He create it, right? So you have to understand in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, angels had a similar question. Angels also asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a similar question. They said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the angels, He said, I am creating إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. I am creating a khalifa, basically a vicegerent of mine on planet Earth. That the Earth will basically have humans that will live there. So إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the angels this, the angels in return, they said, قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Are you going to create? So the angels are speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're saying, oh Allah, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا. Are you going to create a creation that is going to cause fasad and cause corruption? And they're going to cause وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. They're going to cause bloodshed? It's what's the purpose of creating this creation that's going to cause evil, all these calamities to come about, etc.? Why are you going to create these humans? So then thereafter they said, وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. We are angels. We are pure. We glorify you. We praise you. We, وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. We understand your honor and your dignity that you possess. So we worship you in the best of manners. Isn't that all that, that we worship you? Isn't that sufficient? So therefore, coming back, they are saying that, the angels are saying that, why are you even creating this creation in the first place? They are going to cause fasad, they're going to cause shar to increase, and name it, it will be there because of them. So what was the response from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded. He said, قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have given a list of reasons, and He is Allah. He is Rabbul Alameen. He could have mentioned as He wills. And He could have even mentioned that perhaps of reasons. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That I know of that what you do not know. I know of that what you do not know. So similarly, the whatever difficulties, hardship, calamities that we see around the globe, specifically right now, COVID-19 and all this hardships, people are not able to pay rent. What will happen to the economy? What will happen, to the country, and name it, the list of problems. You open news and that's all they're speaking about. What will happen? Every single thing is basically almost linked to COVID-19 now. All the hardships and difficulties that the world is going through. So what will happen basically it is all a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has created this. Why did He create this? Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamu. Inni a'lamu, I know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, and we insan, we really do not know. We know this much, that it is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whenever a hardship, difficulty, calamity, it strikes us, the greatest thing that we need to do is return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and recite Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un as much as we can in abundance. And this month of sabr, this month of patience, this month of Ramadan is basically the key to sabr, to patience. When we say, this is a month of mercy, the month of the Quran, the month of, the month of Quran, we say the month of mercy as well, right? So this is the month of sabr as well, the month of patience. So this is basically, in one hadith, Rasulullah also mentioned with regards to sabr, that as-sawmu nisfu sabr, that the fasting is actually half of sabr, right? So basically, for us to understand this whole concept of why it's there, that's one part of the equation. The other part is, well, what are we doing? That are we turning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are we worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the manner that we're supposed to? Are we adopting patience and sabr? So this is the key question for ourselves, and leaving us with a great dua from the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This is a very great, important part. We should try to make it a daily routine, especially going through these days. Now, coming back all the way in the starting, as we were speaking about, the pathway towards khair, the pathways towards shar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when in Surah Al-Fatiha, it is an introduction to the rest of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, An'amta alayhim, then He says, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. Right? We are making dua. This is the dua that we make constantly. What are we saying? We want to be from amongst the ones that Allah has bestowed His mercy upon, not the ones maghdubi alayhim wal dhalin, the ones that went astray, and not the ones that maghdubi alayhim, that anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they achieved the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we make this dua, in response to the dua is the whole Quran for us. That after we finish this dua, now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us the whole Quran there. That look, you want to be from amongst the ones that are an'amta alayhim, the ones that the bounties of Allah were bestowed upon, then follow the prophets. The stories of the prophets are right through the Quran. And if you want to be saved from the anger of Allah, then look at the stories of Bani Israel, the Yahud, how they lived. Do not live like that, and do not live like the Nasara wal Dhalin. And if that's the whole Quran, basically speaking about the different aspects of their lives, of Bani Israel, of Nasara, etc. That if we want to be from amongst the ones that were an'amta alayhim, the ones that Allah has bestowed His mercy upon, then whenever a difficulty, hardship, calamity comes, then as we were speaking about it, then what we need to do is turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we are from Allah and we have to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we end off with this, inshallah. If anybody has any questions, you can ask, inshallah. The key thing, the key lesson from this is, number one, Surah Al-Fatiha. Ponder, reflect over Surah Al-Fatiha. Everything is in the Surah Al-Fatiha. Whatever is in the Quran is in Surah Al-Fatiha. And number two, this dua of Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Recite this in abundance within these days. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove all the difficulties that we are going through as a ummah. If anybody has any questions, inshallah, you can ask questions. With regards to the topic, sticking into the topic. Inshallah. I mean, if no one has any questions, we can always, basically turn to the scholars. There's alhamdulillah, there's a lot of scholars. MashaAllah, I was just speaking to my cousin, and he was telling me that he was speaking to Mufti Menk, and I was like, Subhanallah, you're speaking to Mufti Menk. He's like, yeah, man, Mufti Menk was at home and he was speaking to me live. So Subhanallah, you have the opportunity. Nowadays, everybody's sitting at home. Back, just look a few months ago, when before this crisis that came about, everybody was busy in their own timing, and you want to speak to a scholar, then you have to actually get a booking with him, that this time to this time, or perhaps go at salah time. Perhaps when he's there, you can probably ask a question here and there. But now, subhanallah, you really want to speak to a great scholar like Mufti Mank, or great scholars across the globe. Subhanallah, you have the means now. I'm not saying that I'm a great scholar. I'm that over here you have great scholars like Sheikh Arafat, Sheikh Said Tora, and the likes of them in Hamilton. So inshallah, whenever you have anybody has any questions, comments, or anything that they perhaps have, that they want to reach out to, alhamdulillah, you have the scholars. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enlighten us, inshallah, and let us all enjoy the maximum out of this beautiful month of Ramadan. And instead of looking at it in a negative aspect, what we are going through, look at it in a positive way. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed it such, and it is happening. And alhamdulillah, we are sitting at home, and we are able to create an environment in our homes. And alhamdulillah, we are able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if whatever we are doing, if you look at it last Ramadan, alhamdulillah, many, I was just listening to the Sheikh Yasir Qadi with a discussion with Dr. Zakir Naik, and they both had a talk with each other on, I'm not sure exactly what the means was, but it's the lectures on YouTube, or the talk is on YouTube. And they were both talking, and they were saying, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, we are able to achieve a lot in this month. Previous Ramadan, we were so busy in different things, in our own things. But now, alhamdulillah, we are all sitting at home. And now, alhamdulillah, we have the time. Many times, we always think back and we say, when will we be able to get this time? When will we be able to get this time? I hope I had, free time like so and so, etc. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to us now. Now it's the time. Are we going to, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this bounty? Are we going to, how are we going to look at this bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, to enlighten us with the Quran, with the recitation of the Quran, as well as pondering over the meanings of the Quran. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saves us all from any sort of difficulty, hardship, calamities, disasters. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He lets us enjoy the month of Ramadan in the maximum, in the best manner.